Welcome to Plowman's Backyard. My name is Kendra, and today we are going to be talking about what is homesteading. And what is homesteading can be different for a lot of people. A lot of the times people think when you're talking about homesteading, you're talking about things like in the 1800s where people lived off the land, they lived off grid, and they did everything. They provided their own food, they sewed their own clothes, they did everything self-sufficient, self-sustainability. And that's what comes to mind with homesteading. Today we're talking a little bit more about modern day homesteading because let's face it, it's not the same as the 1800s today. Back in the 1800s, people actually would work as a family unit. They would have large families, 10, 12, 9 children, and they'd work together. Even sometimes grandparents would live at the homes with the families. And they'd work together to get all of their food in the gardens, to butcher all their chickens, their cattle, things like that, as well as harvest time. They spent their time canning and preparing. A lot of the times they worked as units, and that's how they did their homesteading back then because they had to. They came out of the Great Depression. Today, we don't have that. We have people with smaller families like ourselves. We have one daughter. Today, we also have the thing where children spend more time outside of the home than they do inside the home. A lot more hours are spent at school, outside the home with extracurricular activities, as well as both parents today need to work to provide a decent income for their lifestyles. It's not the same as the 1800s and back then, and we can't expect it to be the same. The thing about homesteading for me has been learning how to do the things if I had to do it. Like, what if I had to scrub my own clothes and wash them? What if I had to do certain things? It's not a bad thing to learn and know. And so it's something that I do like to try to learn and do. But if I don't need to live that way, I don't have to. So let's talk about what is homesteading to me, because it's different for everybody, and for every homesteader it's different. So homesteading to me is basically going back to basics. And what I mean by that is going back to learning a lot of the things that we've lost. I grew up in the city. I didn't grow up gardening. I didn't grow up making my own bread. Now, people back in the days when homesteading was all that they had, they grew up from an early age knowing how to do all those things. So when I'm talking about for me is going back and learning the things that my grandparents grew up doing as it came natural. It does come natural, but it takes time to learn some of those basic skills. So it took time to grow my first garden. I started in the city with a tiny backyard and a tiny garden, and we've come here to the country with just under 2 acres with large gardens, and it took a process. It took time, so I had to learn those basic skills. Homesteading to me is really about going back to the way that God intended us to live. And I know some people may not agree with that, and religion or Christianity may not be in your homesteading journey, but it was a huge part of our homesteading journey. Going back to the way that God intended our family to be outside most of the time, out in nature, learning of nature and all the beauty it has to offer. When I go and I plant my seeds in the garden and I get a harvest of food and we're storing it for the winter, you can see the blessings that come from it. I plant the seed, I water it. I'm not the one that provides the sun. I'm not the one that opens up the shell of the seed. I'm not the one that causes that plant to grow. And I'm not the one that has one little seed that produces billions and billions of seeds by one plant. That comes from God. So for us, homesteading was really part of our Christian growth and lifestyle. So learning how to do those things, even when we got into chickens, God intended us, he planted a garden for Adam and Eve in, the first few chapters of Genesis. And he told Adam, to dress the garden. He said to watch over the animals. That's what we're doing. We're taking special care of these animals. We have chickens, well as a dog and a cat, but we're taking care of these animals. This year I learned to butcher my own, which was a big step for me. It took about 5 years for me going from having chickens as pets with names to going to that step. I know that I took better care of my chickens even in that process than a stranger would, because I cared and I raised those chickens from babies. So this whole journey and homesteading has brought us back to the spiritual aspect of those things and just raising everything. A lot of people think of homesteading as like self-sufficient, and yeah, it's true, you're doing a lot of work and you're doing it yourself, but it's not necessarily self-sustainability. For me, it's dependence on God, because he provides all those things. And honestly, like I said, I came from the city with no knowledge of how to grow a garden, how to grow my own bread. I didn't even have chickens growing up. I've learned those things, and I believe that that knowledge comes from God. So yes, this has been part of our homesteading, is our spiritual growth and our spiritual journey. So when they're homesteading, there is a huge sense of accomplishment and success, and it pushes you to try new things. And I think that is one of my favorite things, is there's a lot of things that I'm doing today that I never thought I would do. Now, a lot of people think, homesteading has to be self-sustainable living or self-reliance. It doesn't have to be that. I grow a lot of our food, but we don't live off like 100% of our food. Why? Because I'm not going to grow fields of wheat. I don't have fields, and I'm not in our location, our climate, and our zone. It's nearly almost impossible to get that much growing season to grow my own wheat. Plus, you've got to have huge machineries and things like that. So that's not something that I plan to do. As well as we eat rice, I'm not planning to grow fields of rice either. I just don't think that's practical. One thing that I think that we can do is get in contact with other homesteaders, other farmers. For instance, I would love to have cows one day. I love cows, but 1.8 acres does not give me enough room to have cattle. Well, I have my huge gardens and my chickens. So getting in touch with other local farmers, other local homesteaders, and swapping. Like, we need to get out of this mentality that we have to do it all by ourselves. We can work together. So that's the other thing with modern day homesteading, is you don't need to be 100%. You're going to wear yourself out. So working together as a community is probably the best way of modern day homesteading. And I think, if that's something you want to get into, don't be afraid to try something new. Don't be afraid to go out and not know what you're doing, because you'll learn as you go. And you don't have to grow everything yourself. You do not have to. We don't even have acres and acres of wood to provide wood for the winter. We rely on an outsource. If that was the case, many people that are living this lifestyle wouldn't be able to do it. So basically, in a nutshell, homesteading is where life happens. Our life for our family revolves around being at home. Doesn't mean we don't go out and do other things and enjoy other things, but I would say 98% of what we do revolves around being at home, and we enjoy it and love it. Anyways, I do have other videos that you may be interested. I have a video called My Homesteading Journey. I kind of go through how I started out and the thought of the process on how to start homesteading and what we did. And I do have a video if you're looking at getting chickens and you're like, I don't know anything about chickens. I do have a backyard chicken playlist. I do talk about raising chickens with an incubator and then raising them with a broody hen, and talk about the difficulties, talk about the struggles that I have. That's one thing that you're going to find out about me. I want to teach you what I know and what I've learned, but I don't want to leave out all the hard stuff. The hard times that I had. This is not about only showing you, the good aspects that are about homesteading and in our life, but the challenges and the struggles that I've had to get to where we're going. So when you have and you start your journey, that you're not going to feel like a failure, and you keep going, because that's one thing I want to do, is encourage you to keep going. I want you to succeed, and I hope that I can help you get there. Also, I must thank Lynn from Bucket List Homestead, who started this hashtag, What is Homesteading? I think is a great topic. I think it's a great idea. I'm going to leave a link in the description down below. I want you to take part, and I want you to read that list, because there's going to be other What is Homesteading videos, and you're going to learn that homesteading is very different from person to person. So if you don't fit in my category of homesteading, you're going to find where you fit in that list down below in the description, because there's going to be people that probably think the same way that you do. Anyways, thank you for joining. I hope you come back. I hope you enjoyed this video. And like I said, you know what? If I can do this, I know you can too. So give it a shot.